It is mentioned by author Shirley Jackson, responsible for the novel The Haunting, that having the ability to dream is something that all living creatures share. Even coral, she says, are probably able to dream, even without a brain. This, in turn, somewhat supports the ideas of J.R.R. Tolkien, creator of The Lord of the Rings, that imagination and fantasy are integral to one's existence, that the ability of one to think of something better than what they have is what enables us to live on despite the many trials of life. There are many works of fantasy that continue to be churned out on a regular basis today, from the works of George R. Martin that led to the Game of Thrones series, and of course, let's not forget J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. However, one of the greater and more memorable authors of American literature, Stephen King, isn't well known for his works of fantasy. Indeed, while considered more of a living legend by his fan base, Stephen King is more remembered for being a horror writer. On the rare occasion he writes about fantasy, however, you better buckle up because you know you're in for a wild ride. Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another episode of Natural Juan. This time we're going to do a quick summary and analysis of another of Stephen King's work, which is Fairy Tale, which is a return to his works of fantasy rather than horror after Eyes of the Dragon and The Adventures of Jack Sawyer, which is composed of The Talisman and Black House. Before all that though, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Mr. Jonathan Green, my patron in Patreon. If you would also like to support my channel and what I do here, you'll find my Patreon, PayPal, and Gcash information in the description below. Now, if you'd also like to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's begin. To be frank, the story of Fairy Tale feels more like three different stories bound into one. It tells the story of a father and son, facing the trials of life together, with the father trying to overcome his alcoholism. Then it shifts to the acts of kindness and heroism of an ordinary individual who chooses to make a promise to God. Finally, there is an epic tale of fantasy that takes place near the end and what most of the book is actually about. Fairy Tale by Stephen King centers on and is narrated by a boy or young man by the name of Charlie Reed. His name is spelled R-E-A-D-E, by the way, and not R-E-E-D or R-E-A-D. He makes that clear throughout the novel. He is the son of George Reed, who is a somewhat successful agent for an insurance company. Charlie Reed's story begins simple enough, and is shown how ideal his life was as a child. However, all this changes after the tragic death of his mother. She is struck on a bridge by a speeding truck, ending her life almost instantly. To think that this all happens when Charlie is only 7 years old. This is something that affects Charlie's father deeply and leads to his depression, alcoholism, and the loss of his livelihood. It gets to the point that Charlie worries that his father's constant consumption of alcohol is what will prematurely end his life. Thankfully, however, a good friend of Charlie's father comes to visit and sees how far his colleague has fallen. By bringing his friend to an organization that helps people control their addiction to alcohol, slowly but surely, they are able to bring Charlie's father back from the brink. It is here that his father's colleague asks the question, "Aren't you sick and tired of being sick and tired?" Do note that his father doesn't change instantly from a depressed drunkard to that of a good businessman. In fact, it takes quite a bit of time, but as things go on, his father did go back to his normal self. By this point, Charlie's father eventually recovers. Sure, George Reed had fallen far after the violent death of his wife, but thanks to the friendship of his co-worker and the love of his son, he is able to return to his career and regain his dignity. While his life was no longer a part of his life, George was at least able to save what he had left. However, this is only the prelude to the rest of the story. Indeed, one can say that the start of the novel feels like a real-life fairy tale, where a man and his son manage to turn their lives around. It's like that movie, In Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. As it turns out, though, the real adventure is only about to begin. After his father's almost miraculous recovery from alcoholism, Charlie makes a promise to God that if a chance comes for him to do what is right, he would do it without hesitation. It is this promise with God that starts off the second part of the story, albeit one that Charlie most certainly didn't expect. In the same town that Charlie lives in is a reclusive old man named Howard Bowditch. A bit of a grump, Mr. Bowditch has a pet German shepherd named Radar that Charlie Reed was frightened of as a child. However, while he may seem strange and a bit withdrawn, preferring to keep to himself and away from the rest of everyone, Mr. Bowditch is a good man at heart, and his dog Radar is even more amazing. One day, Mr. Bowditch has a bad accident wherein he falls from a ladder and breaks his leg. If not for his dog Radar catching the attention of Charlie Reed, who happens to be passing by, Mr. Bowditch might not have been discovered, and his condition could have easily taken a turn for the worse. Luckily, Radar's cries eventually lead to Charlie discovering the poor old man, leading to the latter's rescue by local paramedics. Charlie decides that helping Mr. Bowditch might be God's response to the promise he made after his father's amazing recovery from alcoholism many years ago. So without any hesitation or hope of reward, he helps the old man and his dog. Mr. Bowditch can only be grateful for this as one, he has no close friends or family who can help him walk, and two, the house he lives in is huge and difficult to navigate. As Charlie continues to help Mr. Bowditch, he learns more and more about him. For one thing, he learns that Radar, the old man's dog, is actually quite friendly and is only aggressive towards intruders and anyone who might do her owner harm. Next is that Mr. Bowditch is quite wealthy, though from what, Charlie doesn't know at first. He chooses not to pry though, as he has chosen to help Mr. Bowditch due to his promise to God, and not because he is looking for something in return. The most enduring mysteries about Mr. Bowditch is his large collection of gold and a shed in the back of his home that he keeps locked at all times. Charlie is left to speculate about this a bit, but, again, is hesitant to pursue his curiosity due to his promise to God. He does his best to help Mr. Bowditch to recover from his injuries, all the while pursuing his studies. Unfortunately, all Charlie's hard work comes to nothing when Mr. Bowditch suffers a fatal heart attack. Again, Charlie tries to help the old man, but is too late this time. All that is left now is for the young man to fulfill Mr. Bowditch's last wishes, which are provided to him via recordings that are left behind. Mr. Bowditch finally reveals to him where he found his pieces of gold and what the shed in the back of his home contains. In the shed is a gateway to another dimension or realm where a fantasy kingdom full of magic awaits. What Mr. Bowditch wants is for Charlie to bring his dog Radar, who is also quite old in dog years, to a place in that world that can make her young again. Apparently, Mr. Bowditch has used that otherworldly magic himself and is the reason for his uncanny longevity. He wants Charlie to use the same magic on his dog so that she can live for at least another few years. That said, Mr. Bowditch warns the younger man that the world the gateway leads to will not be safe, and also tells him of a gun he keeps in a safe that Charlie can use to protect himself. What follows is a great adventure fantasy somewhat similar to Stephen King's other work with Peter Straub, The Talisman. It has everything from a beautiful but handicapped princess, sentient animals, magical creatures, an evil king, and an ancient and terrible dragon. It is also here that I think I will stop, as I do not want to spoil the rest of the tale for you, as the third part of the novel is its last and best parts. Anyway guys, I remember promising to you all that I would finish narrating Ophidia and the Devil's Shortcut before starting another video. Unfortunately, with my other, more efficient computer down for the count, I won't be able to proceed until I can get to the data inside. I really hope you enjoyed this video, so stay tuned for more content like this on my channel. Natural Juan, out.